what is the secret to making men cry in a movie?
I don't know. That movie is, I think, our generation's wonderful life. It's a wonderful life, and it happens, and it doesn't matter how often you watch that movie. When you ask your dad to have a kid, it seems to get people, and I'm just glad to have films that that's what's possible with film.
In the summer of 1989, a quiet baseball story set among Iowa cornfields unexpectedly lodged itself into American mythology. Field of Dreams wasn't loud or flashy. It was melancholy, almost whisper-soft, but it rewired something profound in the culture about fathers, faith, and the possibility that some miracles don't announce themselves. More than 3 decades later, its influence hasn't faded. If anything, time has made it feel more sacred. What's remarkable is in 2025, how much people who brought that story to life have carried its emotional legacy forward. Revisiting the Field of Dreams cast isn't just a trip down memory lane, it's a look at how these lives unfolded after helping create a film that refuses to age. Kevin Costner, Ray Kinsella. When Field of Dreams premiered, Kevin Costner was already riding momentum from The Untouchables and Bull Durham, but this film crystallized him as the emotional center of American masculinity. He wasn't just a leading man, he was the man audiences projected their fathers and younger selves onto. In the decades since, Costner has navigated one of Hollywood's most unusual career arcs. Oscar-winning filmmaker, blockbuster headliner, Western revivalist, and in his 60s and 70s, an unlikely television phenomenon with Yellowstone. Even now in 2025, after stepping away from Yellowstone and pouring his energy into his long-gestating Western epic Horizon, Costner remains in that rare category of actor-directors whose creative choices genuinely shape the culture rather than chase it. Quote, "We've come to see the first place White Sox play the mighty Yankees in a field that was once corn. It's perfect. Is this heaven? Yes, it is." That moment, delivered live to millions at MLB's Field of Dreams game, revealed how deeply Costner still carries the mythology of the film. To him, it was never just a role. It became part of the way America remembers itself. James Earl Jones, Terence Mann. If Costner provided the soul of Field of Dreams, James Earl Jones provided its thunder. No character in the film embodied awe at the supernatural more than Mann, whose transformation from cynic to believer remains one of the most emotionally resonant turns in late 80s cinema. Jones entered the film as an already mythic voice, such as Darth Vader, but Field of Dreams showcased something quieter and more aching. In the decades that followed, he became an elder statesman of the arts, continuing film and theater work while anchoring countless narrations in public ceremonies. Though officially retired from voice acting by 2022 and no longer making regular appearances, Jones is still with us at 94, occasionally offering carefully chosen public reflections, always with the gravity of someone who knows his voice belongs not just to entertainment but to memory. Ray Liotta, Shoeless Joe Jackson. Ray Liotta brought an intensity to Shoeless Joe that no one expected. Casting a New Jersey mob archetype as a haunted baseball legend seemed like a gamble, but he played the role with fatalistic quiet, not swagger. In the years following Field of Dreams, Liotta's career exploded with Goodfellas, then stretched across decades of crime dramas, voice work, independent films, and a surprising late career prestige. His sudden passing in 2022, at 67, sent a wave of shock across Hollywood. Not because people didn't know his legacy, but because everyone assumed there was still more coming. Quote, "Well, he didn't come from heaven either," Ray Liotta, laughing about portraying Shoeless Joe batting right-handed. That line, delivered with his trademark dry mischief, sums up why Liotta's Shoeless Joe still feels hauntingly alive. He didn't play a ghost, he played a man who still believed he had something unfinished left to prove. Amy Madigan, Amy Kinsella. Amy Madigan's firebrand presence brought necessary grounding to Field of Dreams. As Annie, she wasn't the quietly supportive spouse from a typical sports drama. She was scrappy, impulsive, and philosophical in her own right, a force of belief equal to Ray. Madigan was already a respected dramatic actor before the film, and afterward, she continued her streak of sharp, politically conscious roles across film, television, and theater. Unlike many of her co-stars, she largely sidestepped franchise culture and prestige television spotlights, consistently choosing character-first work over profile. In 2025, she remains semi-retired, but occasionally appears in carefully chosen indie films and stage productions. Madigan has spoken often about how stories like Field of Dreams are about ordinary people making radical emotional decisions, and how very few Hollywood films are brave enough to do that anymore. I think the hardest thing to do in acting is to play someone who is not extraordinary, because that's where the real heartbreak is, she once reflected to The Guardian, describing her love for characters rooted in everyday vulnerability. Burt Lancaster, Moonlight Graham. Burt Lancaster's appearance as Moonlight Graham was brief, but it may be one of the most quietly devastating late-career performances ever filmed. At 75, he radiated a dignity that didn't feel like acting, more like remembrance. It was Lancaster's final film role, and many viewers have since noticed that he didn't just play Graham, he seemed to be preparing us for the idea that all legends must eventually let go. He passed away just 4 years after the film was released. Timothy Busfield, Mark. Playing Ray's skeptical and financially anxious brother-in-law, Timothy Busfield, gave the film one of its most important human anchors, the rational voice, reminding everyone that real-world pressures don't pause for miracles. Yet when he finally sees the players, his stunned reversal becomes one of the great emotional pivot points of the film. After Field of Dreams, Busfield became a quintessential 90s and 2000s television presence. 30-something, The West Wing, Studio 60, all while gradually shifting more heavily into directing and producing. In 2025, he continues to direct episodes across prestige streaming shows and occasionally returns to acting. He has always spoken about Field of Dreams with almost startled fondness, surprised perhaps at how something so quiet endured so loudly. Gaby Hoffmann, Karin Kinsella. As Ray and Annie's daughter, Gaby Hoffmann was the emotional fulcrum of the film in ways audiences don't often realize on first viewing. Her innocent certainty that people will come reframed the supernatural as simple emotional truth. Hoffmann went on to become one of the most respected character actors of her generation, especially following her adult resurgence in acclaimed series like Transparent and Girls. Rather than chasing superstardom, she built a career on deeply human, often fiercely raw indie and prestige roles. In 2025, she continues to work selectively, often turning down major commercial projects in favor of character-driven storytelling. Frank Whaley, young Moonlight Graham. Frank Whaley's brief appearance as the younger version of Moonlight Graham carried a nearly mythic weight, a dream of a life unlived, meeting itself in the middle of nowhere. Whaley emerged in the early 90s as part of an entire wave of thoughtful young character actors appearing in films like Born on the 4th of July and Swimming with Sharks. While he never courted blockbuster fame, he built a long working career in film and television, eventually transitioning into directing independent features. Today, Whaley is known as a respected veteran craftsman, someone quietly woven through Hollywood for decades, often behind the camera. His youthful Moonlight Graham remains one of the most purely poignant moments in Field of Dreams, a reminder that the dream is never about the game, but the chance to step into it. Dwier Brown, John Kinsella. The final scene of Field of Dreams rests almost entirely on Dwier Brown, and for millions of viewers, he's the face of the line they never forgot. Not one spoken on screen, but the ache of having a catch. Brown continued acting for years in film and television, but he eventually became more publicly associated with Field of Dreams than any other project, writing a memoir in 2014 called If You Build It, reflecting on the way strangers approached him to talk about their fathers. In 2025, he remains active as both an actor and a kind of cultural ambassador for the film, often appearing at MLB's Field of Dreams events and in legacy interviews. He has said repeatedly that the film became less a credit on his resume and more a personal calling, a story people didn't just watch, but emotionally returned to over and over again. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you remember the first time you saw Field of Dreams? What part of it stayed with you the most? Let us know in the comments section below.